You do.
Hey there, Georgie girl, swinging down the street so fancy-free. Nobody you meet could ever see the loneliness there inside you. Hey there, Georgie girl, why do all the boys just pass you by? Could it be you just don't try, or is it the clothes you wear? You're always window shopping but never stopping to buy. So shed those dowdy feathers and fly a little bit. Hey there, Georgie girl, there's another Georgie deep inside. Bring out all the love you hide, and oh what a change there'd be. The world would see a new Georgie girl. Georgie girl, dreaming of the someone you could be. Life is a reality, you can't always run away. Don't be so scared of changing and rearranging yourself. It's time for jumping down from the shelf a little bit. Hey there, Georgie girl, there's another Georgie deep inside. Bring out all the love you hide, and oh what a change there'd be. The world would see a new Georgie girl. Hey there, Georgie Wake girl. Up, Georgie girl. Hey there, Georgie Come girl. On, Georgie girl. Hey there, Georgie Wake girl. Up, Georgie girl. Hey there, Georgie girl.
Good morning. My name is Kate Tyler Webber. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the lands on which we are meeting here today. I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and celebrate the diversity of the Aboriginal peoples and their ongoing cultures to this lands and the waters of New South Wales. Today, my role here is to help celebrate the life of and pay tribute to James MacMillan, known to you as Jim. On behalf of Jim's family, I'd like to welcome you each here to the chapel today and to say a heartfelt thank you for your presence. Also, I'd like to thank those who are not able to be here but who are joining us online. And I must also thank Jim, one of Jim's longest friends, for being here as well today. Jim was born on the 16th of April to Elizabeth and Wilfred in Balmain. Jim was the eldest of two. His brother was Bill. Jim and Lois met when they were married on the 5th of February in 1955 in Mossman. They had 3 children together, John, Fiona and Ciandra. Jim was father-in-law to Alex and Deborah. Jim was grandfather to Clark, Fiona and Ellie and their partners. Jim had an extensive number of great-grandchildren and extended family and extended great-grandchildren. Can I now ask Fiona to come with John? Thank you.
Make the call.
Yeah.
Hope so. You're up, yeah.
Yes?
We can hear.
Tell me when to start.
Go.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, hello. Okay, hold on a minute. I just have to turn off the thing for a minute. Hold on. Sorry. Okay, can you still hear me?
Yes, yep.
Yes, okay. Sorry about that, everyone. Wonders of technology. Hello, everybody from Rome, and thank you all so much for being with us today. I'm really sorry I can't be there in person, of course, but at the same time, I do feel incredibly lucky that I managed to spend a good part of February in Sydney, and so I was able to spend time with Dad and say goodbye to him. It would have been very hard not to have the chance to do that. But there was a long period before I came out in February during which I wasn't able to be there thanks to the pandemic. And even before the pandemic, when I was able to come out a couple of times a year, I wasn't around to help Dad with all the things that he needed doing, especially in the last years. So before I say a few words about Dad, I wanted, from my heart, to thank John and Deb, and to thank Sandra and Alex, and their families, Dad's adored grandchildren and great-grandchildren, for always being there for Dad in these last years in 1,000 different ways. It made an enormous difference for him, and I know he was incredibly, extremely grateful to you all. Since Dad died, I've been really moved, of course, by the lovely and sometimes very funny messages that people have sent me with memories of Dad's kindness, sense of humour, rather dry, generosity, curiosity, energy, the way in which he and Mum always welcomed and took an interest in our friends. And through all those memories, I've been trying to work out how to say in a few words what it is that makes me so grateful to Dad and to Mum. And I think it's this, that by always providing us with a sense of security and the feeling that there was a safety net, they gave us the confidence and the freedom to grow up, go out into the world, and to do the things that mattered to us. Even though they're both gone, that sense of security, that safety net is still there, and I think it always will be. And that's a really precious gift. At a dinner at Manly Golf Club that we had to celebrate Dad's 70th birthday, so quite a few years ago, almost 26, I asked Mari Fogarty, who, as Kate just said, along with her husband Jim and his brother Jack, were amongst Dad's most long-standing and closest friends. In fact, I think, but Jim will be able to say, I think maybe that Mari knew Dad before he met Jim and Jack. Anyway, I asked Mari what Dad was like as a boy and as a teenager, and she replied, wild. He was completely wild. And then she said, who would have thought that he'd become such a good husband and father? Somehow, that still seems like the perfect tribute to him, even though I have to confess that when I told him about what Mari had said, I, of course, emphasized the part where she said he was wild at the expense of the good husband and father part. Okay. Yesterday, although only just yesterday by Roman time, since it's only about 20 past 12 in the evening here, yesterday was Mum's birthday. And I like to think that this year, for her birthday, even if slightly early, she got what she would have most wanted as a gift and that is to be reunited with Dad. Together, they can celebrate what would have been Dad's 96th birthday in April. I, however, with these very few words, because there are other people that want to speak, want to celebrate them. I want to celebrate Mum and Dad, and I want to thank them with love for everything. Our memory of them will be joyful and never ending. Thank you so much.
All right. Excuse me while I just battle with the technology. There we go. Yes, there's a bit of a cast of thousands of people to talk. There's quite a few pages, but it's big writing, so don't get too concerned that it's going to go for too long. Determined and strong-willed are the two words that most readily come to mind when I think of Dad, of Jim. And I expect that anyone that came to know him over his nearly 96 years of life would appreciate why I say this. I do feel sure that Jim would not want us to linger on his terribly difficult start to his life, with his father passing away next to him at the theatre whilst his mother was at home, pregnant with his brother. But suffice to say, I think that that no one could really ever appreciate the suffering involved. Jim didn't talk about that, and he didn't dwell on it. He just got on with it in his own determined and strong-willed way. Jim had many successes, both in his professional life and his personal life. Some of my fondest childhood memories are of family get-togethers where Jim would entertain the children by making my cousin's toy rabbit jump up his arm like magic. And I don't think he would mind if I suggested that at times he may have drunk a little bit too much, which made the backyard cricket matches all the more amusing. He launched himself into parenthood, I think it's fair to say, as much as he launched himself into everything else. As I was growing up, he maintained good friendships with many of the parents of my and my sister's friends and their parents. He loved Siandra's sporting prowess, and we did follow her around the country as she played softball everywhere around the country. And he was incredibly proud of Fiona's ever-expanding academic career. He was passionate about his work as an engineer, and on many occasions I remember him working till the early hours of the night and get his projects over the line. He was also passionate about his music, especially his beloved Gershwin, and you'll hear some of that today. And he loved his landscape paintings and his art, and he had a huge collection of that. One of the things I realised in the last days of Jim's life is that humour was a constant in how we communicated. And I realised that this when he was passing away and we were in the room, and one of the nurses pointed out to him that his family were in the room and that we're having a bit of a laugh in the context of all the sadness. And that nurse looked a bit shocked, but I don't think Jim would be. He could dish it out, but he could also take a laugh at his own expense, and I don't think it would seem right to him if there wasn't a bit of that today, and there should be a bit of that today. Anyone who knew Jim and his determined and strong-willed nature would also be aware that it came with very strong opinions on many or perhaps most things and people, and despite that, he was also capable of seeing the other side of an argument. One of my clearest memories, having listened for years over the 1970s, was about the evils of the trade union movement that he was dealing with in his work at the time. And but I also remember him telling me about the importance of trade unions and the contribution that they made to reasonable working conditions. He was able to see the other side of things. And I also remember he had to go to South Africa during the apartheid times for work, and he was absolutely appalled by it. And this was one of the things about Jim, underpinning everything and those strong opinions. there was also a strong sense of fair play and social justice which guided him, even if it wasn't always immediately obvious in what he had to say. He wasn't immovable. He did move with the times, sometimes very slowly, but he was capable of seeing the world for what it was. So what is Jim's legacy? There are many sayings and habits that will live on, I'm sure through me and my sisters, and probably through his grandchildren as well. Some of them that come to mind is that every time you would see a pub anywhere, it was a death pit. If there was more than one car on the road, it was like Pitt Street. The term shit bugger me has a universal application. When anything could go slightly wrong, it will always come out. And who could forget, failing to plan is planning to fail. As hard as I try, I never will. I'm sure my wife and my brother-in-law will continue to experience Jim's Scottish traits, including turning lights off in rooms not being used and questioning whether it is really necessary to have the air conditioning on just because it's 40 degrees. And let's face it, an innings of 96 years is pushing the use-by date to its limits, and that is just how Jim would have wanted it. I will always remember the exhilaration and fear of being taken out to catch waves as a small child, but that's turned into a lifelong love of the water for me, and I've travelled the world seeking that excitement. But when I look around this room, and this is the point, what I see is a bunch of determined and strong-willed people who are motivated to do... Pardon me. They're motivated to do the right thing in the world. And if that is not the finest legacy, I don't know what is. Thank you for everyone for coming. I just want to particularly thank Deb and Ellie. They have supported me through the last 10 years of supporting Jim, and I could never have done it without them. Thank you.
Can I ask the grandchildren, Clark, Fiona and Ellie, to come now, please?
Yeah, look, it's. I think Uncle John covered off on a lot about Grandpa and Grandad. I think he's a very special person who could see both sides of an argument. He was also cheeky. That's one of my. So you know the little ha, you laugh. Really cheeky with things. So one story for me is when he went for a cruise around New Zealand. And this is in the times when the wallabies were good. And he was stirring all of the Kiwi people, saying, "Oh no, I think you've got us covered. New Zealand's got us covered. There's no way we'll beat you." But he knew very well that the wallabies would win, so he was waiting for that victory to rub it in. So yeah, really important. Cheeky. Some of my earlier memories was also a little bit cranky. And that was obviously due to 2 knee replacements and hip and back. And yeah, as Uncle John said, shit bugger me. Came out a lot. Numerous times in the car. He knew the Spit Bridge very well. Knew exactly what time that opened and knew when and how to avoid it. So things like that will always stick in my memory, and obviously, for us, it's always sad to lose a grandparent, but I think we also should be grateful that he lived to such a good age, and that our children got to meet their great grandfather. I think is something that is very special. So, and it comes down to him basically looking after himself. I think through all those years. Obviously worked very hard as an engineer, and that's some of my earliest memories as well, how hard he worked, how early he left and how late he came in home. And the poo car that he had for a time, the old poo car. There must have been some language spoken in there from the trip from Seaforth to La Perouse. Yeah, to La Perouse, so quite a long drive. So must have been some language spoken in that car by himself. So I'd say cheeky, sometimes cranky, and also very stubborn. And so last week, just up at home, I was talking with one of my uncles up at home about Grandpa and his impact on our life, and I said, he was a stubborn old man, and he said, have you looked at yourself? That must be where you get it from. I never thought of myself as stubborn, but maybe so. I think, to be grateful to have him for as long as we did, and also grateful that we had grandparents, both Nanny, Grandma and Grandad, Grandpa, who were so passionate about making sure their children and grandchildren got a really good education and a really decent education. And at his 90th, which is probably say for us a really positive experience of our grandfather at his 90th, because he was in such good spirits then. He had his two best mates there as well. So it was a really special weekend for his 90th, and he made an amazing speech. Uncle John cringed a couple of times. Didn't know where it was going, but he made a really amazing speech, and he spoke about Granny Mus, his mother Granny Mus, who we were also lucky enough to meet. So, for Fiona and I are a little bit older than Ellie, but so we got to know Granny Mus really well as well. So I think grateful for us at our age to have known a great grandparent, and then 3 grandparents, I think, is really something that's quite special that not many people get in their life. So, but he spoke about his mother and how determined she was that he got a really good education, and it just has flowed intergenerationally since there. So, I think it's important. Obviously, it's a sad time, but also to send our grandfather off in a really nice way, in a positive way, and for him to be reunited with his wife, Nanny Grandma. So, thank you all for being here and celebrating his life.
Well, oh dear. I guess just really quick on from me. When we walked in and we saw the timber dolphin on there in front of that beautiful casket, that just reminded me. One of my earliest memories of being at Grandma and Grandpa's place was playing with those dolphins. So by the time we came along, there wasn't a whole lot of toys there, and we played with those, and even up until the last time we visited Grandpa, which would have been maybe 6 months ago or something like that, maybe a little bit earlier, he had those, and our son Benelong was playing with the dolphins in his room, and so to see that there, it's a wonderful tribute, and it really encapsulates a lot for me and my memories of Grandpa. There's so much that can be said about that old man, he supported us with everything that we did. I lived there at their place for a little while when I first moved to Sydney, and some of this, just some really funny stuff I remember. So I would have been maybe 20 or something, and we were driving in the car, and he had a little tirade at some other driver and was calling him every name under the sun. I think it was long-haired something was the I'm sure you can all imagine the colourful language that went with it. And Grandma, Jim, and he was like, what? She goes, Fiona's in the car, and he goes, oh, she's an adult or something, and she was like, I don't care, you don't speak like that in front of her. So it was it was a very colourful time, and I'm forever grateful for both of their involvement and the support in our lives. And as a parent myself, I've come to realise that that grandparent support and participation involvement in our children's life is just completely, you can't even measure it. It's just it's the most special thing ever. So I really appreciate that. Thank you for coming. Try and get around that, baby.
It's all right. I'm used to that. I wasn't really I didn't really have anything prepared, but anyway. When Clarkie was talking about the knee replacements, it reminded me one of my earliest memories of Jim is when he went into hospital for the knee replacement. I drew him a map. I would have been a tiny kid. I drew him a map to get home from the hospital. I just wanted to say that I couldn't draw him a map for this one, but I know that my nanny Lo would help him find his way this time.
Sandra, if you'd like to come.
Oh, that's a really tough act of
I know. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. Dear. I really wanted to thank everybody for coming. It's really wonderful to see you all here. I wanted to acknowledge the land on which we're on, the Duck and Jung people. Their beautiful country here, and I'm counting on their ancestors to help our father find his way over to the dreaming. I also want to acknowledge John and Deb and Ellie, because this last week has been really horrendous for them, and it has taken so much out of them. I've thanked them so much for being there this week, the week of Dad's passing. So thank you so much for that. So when I was a little girl, I could never say my S's, and Dad would drive along, and he was always like he had to find somewhere to park, and so Mum remembers this day so well when I was saying, "There's a fort there, Daddy, there's a fort." And so these are just sort of little things that I've put together. When he was away for about 3 months in South Africa, when I was little, I think I was about 3 or 4, and Mum was holding it together really well. And she said to me, when I grew up, she said, "I was going so well and your father was coming home the next day or whatever," and she said, "I was going great until you had to say to me, 'I don't think I'm going to know who he is. I don't know if I'll recognise him.'" She got really upset about that. But I did recognise him. That was good. He used to take me to the golf course because he reckoned I had an eagle eye for finding golf balls. So, which I was quite happy to do, because they used to have this machine at the golf course that you pop the golf balls in and clean them off, and I thought that was great. I didn't mind that. Dad was very keen on the softball. He loved that. That all came about because my sister Fiona went to Neutral Bay Public, and they started up a softball club called the Bay Softball Club, and Dad got very involved because Fiona did play for a little while, but I played the longest, and Dad loved coaching. He used to coach the A-grade softball side called the Jabberwockies. That was their name. It was fantastic. Best name in the whole comp. And yes, I did go on to represent New South Wales in softball, which I'm very proud of, but I would never have been able to do it without the support of my father and mother, and my poor brother, who got, carted around all over the place. He never quite forgave me for that, but anyway. So I really wanted to acknowledge how wonderful that was. When I left home at 17, because, I feel much better now that Auntie Mari said that he was wild, because that helps me now to say, yeah, I was a bit wild too. I wanted to find my own way. I didn't want to finish school. I didn't want to go to university, which those things that were really hard for Dad to accept at that time. And I moved up to Coffs Harbour, and I found Neil Young. I just couldn't believe his music really spoke to me, and at that age. I'll explain that a bit later anyway. But over the years, Dad and I did find our love. Well, our love never disappeared, but we found a new love and a new respect for each other. And he absolutely adored Clark and Fiona, and was so proud of them because, as Alex and I are, because obviously they did things that he thought were a good idea, but he really adored them, and also Alex. He was really proud of Alex, and so yeah, that's good. He loved coming to Coffs Harbour. He loved the house that we bought, and he was really pleased about all that, and he really enjoyed doing that. So the song that's going to be played is called Old Man by Neil Young, and when I was, I suppose you would have to say, estranged a little bit from Dad, it really spoke to me at that time in my life, and it reminded me about how much I did love him. That's why it hurt so much. So we're going to play this song, and I think we're going to get people up to, will you do that for, thank you. I might do it first, so
Absolutely. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to now give you an opportunity to come forward to place a flower. This is the time when you can say your goodbyes.
Old man, look at my life, I'm a lot like you were. Old man, look at my life, I'm a lot like you were. Old man, look at my life, 24 and there's so much more. Live alone in a paradise that makes me think of two. Love lost, such a cost. Give me things that don't get lost, like a coin that won't get tossed, rolling home to you. I'm a lot like you. I need someone to love me the whole day through. One look in my eyes and you can tell that's true. Lullabies, look in your eyes, run around the same old town. Doesn't mean that much to me, to mean that much to you. I've been first and last, look at how the time goes past, but I'm all alone at last, rolling home to you. Tell that's true.
Nothing like some grandchildren to lift things. We are now going to pause the service and put some images up on the screen. Thanks, Matt. It is now time to commit Jim's physical body to the elements. But before we do so, however, let us be thankful and grateful for his life. The memories we leave behind with our family is what is important in life. Memories. Today is not goodbye. Today is thank you. Thank you for touching our lives and giving us joy. Thank you for the memories we will cherish forever. Thank you for the good times. And thank you for your loyalty to loved ones and friends. Oh, it's a big one. Thank you for your love.
It's not a snake, you're okay.
And thank you for your laughter. Your life we honour and your departure we accept. Thank you all once again for your presence here today, and thank you for the love you have shown to Jim over his lifetime. As we conclude the service now, I ask as we leave the chapel today, you head straight over to the cafe across the car park. This is a very important part of today. You've all got so many memories with Jim, and this is where you can share those memories. Thanks, Matt.
Train whistle blowing makes a sleepy noise. Underneath their blankets go all the girls and boys, rockin', rollin', riding out along the bay, all bound for Morningtown, many miles away. Driver at the engine, fireman rings the bell, Sandman swings the lantern to show that all is well. Rockin', rollin', riding out along the bay, all bound for Morningtown, many miles away. Maybe it is raining where our train will ride. All the little travelers are warm and snug inside. Rockin', rollin', riding out along the bay, all bound for Morningtown, many miles away. Somewhere there is sunshine,